Good morning, everyone. Welcome once again to our online services. God bless you. Thank you for keeping up with all that we've been doing and for the support for everybody who's been connected to this. We so much appreciate every one of you. A number of announcements again this morning. Remember, we have an evening service starting at 5:30. The link will be posted on our WhatsApp forum, and you can be able to link with that so that you can be able to join us for the evening service. Remember that every Tuesday and every Thursday, as we go through this lockdown and this COVID-19, we shall be having prayer, and God willing that they open it up soon and we can congregate back in the church. Remember that our prayer is from 6 to 7, that is 30 minutes. You zoom in with the app Zoom. We have a prayer meeting together corporately, then 30 minutes you spend it by yourself, and you have prayer with your family or by yourself, and we're just trying to encourage you to pray as a family or pray individually. With that, also don't forget to give. Giving is important. We are in a very difficult predicament. The whole month of April, we have not picked up any kind of significant offering. We're still running diesel generators to just bring these things to you online. It costs money. So please, your giving is still something that you have to keep doing. And God will bless you in this time and season of life. Thank you very much for all that. I want to thank also Brother Destiny Lawrence for his time. He's the one handling this whole thing, the video, the uploading and everything, editing. What a great man, and may God bless him. When you pray, please pray for Brother Destiny Lawrence. God to bless him. Amen. All right, let's go to the Word of God this morning. And I want to preach from Judges chapter 13, verses 1 to 5, the story of Samson. Samson is one of the most, to my own opinion, probably the biggest underachiever in the Bible. And we're going to look into that in his life. And I want to come against the spirit of underachieving. You are meant to achieve at greater heights in life. And your life to be significant and make the impact that it's supposed to. But most people achieve, but they underachieve. I'm going to minister this sermon that I've titled The Underachievers. From Judges chapter 13, verses 1 to 5. It says, "Again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. Now there was a certain man from Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Indeed, now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink, and not to eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head. For the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines." Let's pray. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for your grace. Once again, God, we've assembled, God, in your name. Lord, I pray, move upon us, God. Bring peace in every home. Let God, your spirit, God, descend and God, change us. I give you glory and honor. Thank you, Lord, for all that you're doing for us. Thank you, God, for this season, this time, God. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen. The imbalance of conflicts forces or causes human underachievement. Let me say that statement again. The imbalance of conflict or conflicting forces causes humans to underachieve. And this whole sermon is based on that statement, please open up your heart and your mind and listen closely to what I'm about to teach this morning. We have in our text the birth or the announcement of the birth of Samson. Samson's birth is announced by an angel. Similar births in the Bible are those of Isaac, when the Lord came down and told Abraham and Sarah that you're going to have a child by this time next year. John the Baptist, Elizabeth and Zacharias, Gabriel came and announced the birth of John the Baptist and of our Lord Jesus Christ. The Lord came to, an angel came to Mary and to Joseph in a dream and told them they shall have a child and a name. Samson is born in a similar manner, announced of heaven. All these names I've mentioned, they have a particular task they have to accomplish. These are special human beings born, announced by heaven. And when this happens, they have a task that they have to accomplish for God. Their birth comes by divine pronunciation. An angel comes and to usually an impossible situation. Sarah was 90 years old and never had a child, and it's an impossible situation. John the Baptist, also Elizabeth was old and past the years where she could have a child. And the angel intercedes in that kind of a moment. Also, we find the Lord Jesus, Mary was a virgin. And all the time that we see angels intervene and announce this birth to show you how special it is to heaven and to the throne of God, it's usually in impossible situations. This is also true with Samson. His mother and father had been barren. And an angel comes and tells them they shall have a child. This comes to pass. These people all have a specific task. Samuel has a specific task. It says here, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Israel had been in the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. It's interesting that if Gideon, they were under the Midianites for 7 years, but now they are under the Philistines for 40 years. They had sinned against God, and a very interesting study on itself, that they were now under bondage, under the Philistines for 40 years. They were under subjugation. Samson was meant to be a consecrated man. He was not supposed to shave his hair. He was not supposed to drink wine, not to eat anything unclean, keep sexual cleanliness. In other words, he was a Nazirite. A Nazirite is a person who is consecrated to God and adheres to very strong and hard restrictions. There are Nazirite vows that men can make for a period of time. You can make a Nazirite vow for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years, or whatever period you can make that Nazirite vow, that I shall keep to these restrictions for God so that I can consecrate your life to God. We find Samson. The Bible tells us he was going to be a Nazirite all his life. The Bible says here, for the child shall be a Nazirite to God from the womb. His mother was even warned not to drink, not to touch the unclean, because it would defile even Samson. This man was consecrated unto God. Christianity is also a time of consecration to God for a lifetime. There are things that by virtue of being a Christian you're not supposed to do. This setting of yourself apart and avoiding certain indulgences can become very difficult. Christianity comes with that you shall not do certain things. Just like Samson, he was not supposed to drink, touch any dead thing. He was never supposed to be involved with the unclean things. And this can become very difficult. And the Christian life demands that. Jesus says, no one having followed him, you have to separate yourself from your mother, separate yourself from this. And it's very hard to do some of these things as a Christian. The story of Samson resonates with every Christian because he struggles with these restrictions. He struggles to be a Nazarite. He struggles to be consecrated. He struggles to be sanctified. And that's you and me right there. Whenever I read about Samson, I see myself there. I see my struggles. I see my weaknesses. The life of Samson highlights our own struggles and difficulties as we go through a sanctified Christian life. A man called Kurt Lewin, a psychologist, is known to be one of the modern pioneers of social organization and applied psychology. Kurt Lewin is known for the concept known as field forces. In simple terms, the resolution achieved through different fields or forces that oppose each other during or bring about tension according to their goals. In other words, in his theory, always an opposing force. There is a driving force and an opposing force. And he says in every issue in life, there is an equilibrium. In other words, there is a driving force and an opposing force, and the issue stays in the middle. It's called a status quo or an equilibrium. So if you're going to change an organization or an organizational culture, you're going to have to manipulate one of the forces, either the one resisting or the one driving, so that you can bring change. He says culture remains stagnant because there's a resisting force and there's also a driving force. And to bring change, there has to be a manipulation on one force or the other. For example, if you desire to develop and bring change onto an organization or a nation, you are going to come with a certain force that's called, want to develop. It's a force on its own. But as you try to change, you're going to find resistance in that culture. People will resist you. Institutions will resist you. And you'll find that your driving force and the resistance reaches somewhere a status quo or an equilibrium. So for any sort of change to occur, there has to be either the strengthening of one of the forces so that it can overcome the other, or the weakening of another so that it can overcome, or it can just crumble. So what they do is you look at the resistance and you go and you weaken the resistance so that the driving force can overrun it, or you go out and you strengthen the driving force for change and it comes and overruns the resistance. That is called the force field concept or theory by Kurt Lewin. This theory plays out a lot in our lives also. There is a strong battle of forces in us. The scriptures call them the struggle between the old and the new man. Galatians 4:22. But you have not so learned Christ, if indeed you have heard him and have been taught by him, as the truth is in Jesus, that you put off concerning your former conduct the old man, which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lust, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man, which was created according to God in true righteousness and holiness. Colossians 3 verses 9. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man, who is renewed in the knowledge according to the image of him who created him. So the Bible tells us that even in us we are full of conflict. There is a conflict of the old man and his old deeds. There's also the new man and what he wants to prevail. And there's most of the times life reaches an equilibrium. Most Christians, you know the changes that you need to make in your life. There's some of us, you need to change the way you talk. Some of us, it's the way we think. Some of us, it's the way we act. Some of us, it's the way we just relate. Some of us, it's the way we do business. There are many changes that, because somebody said change is constant. You have to keep changing. But to change, you find that inside of you there's resistances. Yes, Christ has come into your life. The new man has come into you. Paul again there in Colossians 3:9, do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man, who is renewed in knowledge according to the image of him who has created him. There is a new person that's been put in you, the new man. But you find there is conflict between these two. The old man is resisting, the new man is trying to push forward. And there comes now the force field theory. There is now, we find, the conflict between consecration and complementary. Let me explain this to you. Consecration means to be dedicated, sanctified, and devoted to God. The new man wants to be dedicated, sanctified, and devoted to God. There's a complementary man, which means praise, admiration, or something that makes them feel good. This is the old man that wants to be praised, admired, always wants to feel good with the things of the earth, things of the world. The consecrated man is the new man. The complementary man is the old man. And you find in you will always have this struggle where you want to dedicate, want to be sanctified, and we want to be devoted to God, but something about you finding attention, to be praised, to be admired by people. That's why most people today, we are looking for wealth and to go above everybody, drive the best car, own the best house, wear the best clothes, so that people can admire you. That's a complementary man. That's constantly opposing that man, the consecrated man. The Bible calls the consecrated man the man of the Spirit, and the complementary man the man of the flesh. This is a struggle in every human from the beginning of time. We can go to Adam and Eve. When the devil came, he appealed to the complementary man. Wouldn't you know that you will be like God? And you shall be able, and they look, oh, I'll have the compliments. I'll be admired. And that's where the fall of man comes from. But God wants the consecrated man to live. Samson is a consecrated man from the womb. And we find Samson now is going to struggle his whole life with this. When you read the story of Samson, you cannot help but to notice the conflict by the decisions he makes. To watch Samson, you just look at his decisions and you will see this conflict everywhere. You see, no man can live in a status quo forever. Somewhere one force needs to be strengthened or the other needs to be weakened. Samson is a man who has been raised as a Nazarite. He gets of age. Maybe he was 20 years old. The Bible doesn't tell us, maybe 25. But it was at an age where he wants to get married. No man can live for the rest of his life in a status quo or in a place of equilibrium. Something has to change somewhere. Samson now wants a wife. He wants to change his status. From being a single Nazarite man, he wants to marry. But Samson's decisions always put him in a pitfall or a quagmire. The whole story of Samson is about him strengthening the complementary man. All underachievers are notorious for empowering the complementary man, the old man. Every underachiever that I know, person who has not grown to what God wants them to be, are simply because, or it's simply because they are always empowering the complementary man or empowering the flesh. Samson judged Israel for 20 years, but he underachieved his potential. He never removed the Philistines from ruling over the Israelites. He didn't leave any offspring, and he dies pathetically. And this is because Samson had a life of constantly empowering the flesh or the complementary man. Judges 14:1-3. Now Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. So he went up and told his father and mother, saying, I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me as a wife. Then his father and mother said to him, is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren or among all my people that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she pleases me well. Look at this man. This is one of his first pitfalls. Samson is constantly empowering the flesh. He goes out and he wants to marry from the Philistines. The Bible teaches us, do not be unequally yoked. He goes out and he says, I want to marry a Philistine. And the person, listen, don't we have ladies amongst the Israelites? Come, we can probably go, let's go on. He says, no, she's the one I want. But the Philistines offered compliments, recognition, which is what he desired. Hence the Philistine woman pleased him more than the consecrated Israeli woman. You see, if you are empowering your flesh or empowering your old man or the complementary man, what you will always see in life are things that appease only the flesh, or things that will give you compliments. Things that people will say, look at him. You see, when you drive that nice car, all you want to see is everybody applaud you and give you names. I've had conversations with several people, and it's amazing how they say, people say this about me. People say that about me. And when I hear that, I usually sit in my heart and say, all their life, they are working so that somebody out there can give them some form of admiration, attention, and applause. They don't work to devote themselves to God. You see, consecration demands that you don't look for people praises. You don't look for people to applaud you. You don't look for people to come and, because consecration means you dedicate your life to God. Elijah lived in the desert. John the Baptist ate locusts and honey. They were not into compliments, but the complimentary man, the flesh. We have today the Christian church and the believer who craves compliments from the world. To be known as the richest man. I'm not against being rich. But most of us, we want the most. I want to be the most finest person. I want to be the most of this, the number one. And as you're looking for that, it's basically looking for compliments. We don't just want to have things, but we want to have the most. Today in the world, you can read Forbes magazine. All it is all about is about who is the richest man. You're not just rich. You have to be the number one richest man in Africa. Richest man in this. Richest man in that. Biggest of this. All of this. All of that. All of this. And this is all about compliments. Who makes the most money? Who doesn't? Who is the better of this? Who is the better of that? Who is the better? Who is the greatest? It's a complimentary man. In Samson's mind, the Philistines offered a place where his highest success will be. That's why he wants to marry from the Philistines. Remember, it's his marriage. He goes out to a Philistine woman. We find Samson, in all this occasion of his life, he kills a young lion at one time with his bare hands. And as a Nazarite, he leaves it there. He passes by after a number of days. He finds in the carcass there is bees and there's honey in it. He goes and eats from that. He's a Nazarite. He is not supposed to touch dead things. Remember that. Consecration and complementary. This conflict is working right there. This I'm not supposed to do, but hey, you know, honey is sweet, and let me take of this. He didn't care about consecration. Again, we find him, he's enhanced, he's empowering of the complementary man. He marries the Philistine woman. On the wedding day, or the wedding feast, which went on for 1 week, he gambles with the widow. Out of the strong, something to eat. He gambles with that widow. And says to them, if you break or find out what this riddle means, I will give you 30 pieces of clothing. Well, we find Mr. Samson. The Philistines conspire, go to his wife, and they press her to say, find out. She comes to him, Samson, I love you, Samson, I love you. Please tell me this thing or else this one. He reveals the riddle. They come and tell it to him. He loses the bet. Out of that, he goes and kills 30 men from a nearby town, brings their clothing, and goes off in a tantrum. He is now acting out. You see, if you empower the complementary person, you empower the flesh, you start acting out in the flesh. We can go on with the stories of Samson. He disappears for some time. Some scholars even say up to a year. He shows up one day wanting his wife again. Don't know if it's lust or whatever caused him to come back, but he comes back to find it to his wife. And he finds that his wife has been given to another man. The father says, listen, you've been gone for so long, we took your best man and gave him your wife. Samson is upset with this. He goes into the field and catches 300 foxes. I don't know how you do that, but he did. He found them, ties their tails together, puts fire, and lets them loose into the fields of the Philistines. See him acting out now in the flesh. Nowhere Nowhere do I find Samson acting as a consecrated man. He's always fleshing out. You see, being called by God means also being consecrated to God. Being born again doesn't mean just you know Christ. It means you're also consecrated. You're given to God in mind, body, and soul. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. But we find now Mr. Samson here. The Philistines are upset. You know, interestingly, Samson wasn't even so much liked by the Israelites. They go up to the tribe of Judah and they say, Judah, we're going to kill you. Remember, the Israelites are in subjugation to the Philistines. So we're going to kill you. Give us Samson. To the tribe of Judah. Interesting here, just to pause for a few seconds. Look at what he's doing, Samson. His lack of consecration is putting in danger the tribe of Judah. He was a Danite. Look at where the enemy goes to Judah. Judah is a tribe of the Lord Jesus. It's a tribe of David. Look at what is risking here. Probably even the birth of Jesus went at risk right in that moment because of Samson's behavior. He's empowering them. I wonder many times when people act out in the flesh, when people don't consecrate themselves, what you're putting in danger. Your children's future. Children are not yet born. David was David here. There was a David in Judah. There is the Lord Jesus. What you're putting in danger. I wonder in your life right now because you're constantly feeding your flesh. The men of Judah under pressure go and locate where Samson is and say, hey. Samson breaks a deal with them, says, hey, listen, if you take me there and make sure you won't kill me. They say, okay. He lets them carry him and they take him to where the Philistines are. He gets there, he busts up and he kills them with a fresh jawbone of the donkey. He kills 1,000 of them. Samson is having fun. He's constantly busting out in the flesh. All this is a clear example of Samson strengthening the complementary man. And on one side, weakening the consecration. There's nowhere here where we find Samson secluded and was a consecrated man. The empowering force becomes blind to the weakened entity. Let me close with these last thoughts here. Judges 16:4. Afterward it happened that he loved a woman of the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came to her and said to her, entice him and find out where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. Delilah means weak, faithless, vulnerable. She was from the valley of Sorek, meaning wine, or a place of wine. One, he's not supposed to touch wine, anything that relates to that. But that's where we find him. Samson was strong in might, but he used his whole life to strengthen the wrong part or the wrong man. Delilah was weak, and in that he was blinded. See, whatever you empower will begin to get blind to what you're weakening. He thought, you know what, nobody can touch me. We find Samson is going to toy with Delilah. Oh, bring them, let them touch me, tie me with the new bowstrings. Oh, let them come and weave my hair into a button. Let them come and, do this and do that. And every time that happens, there will be some Philistines on the door. The Philistines are upon you again. And he's toying with them. Listen, he began to use the gifts of God to play games. People in the flesh begin to use the Spirit of God, the Word of God, the power of God to play games. They begin, that's what he's doing. He's just there, he busts up with energy, beats up the Philistines, he comes back again, and there he is. You see, Samson ends up as a blind man. And it wasn't caused by Delilah. It wasn't caused because Samson had made a mistake. It's because Samson, for years, always empowered the complementary man, the flesh. And at one time, the flesh was stronger than the spirit man. And we find that there is, because it's interesting to me, it says she put him on his lap and he slept on her lap. Flesh. Such that they would cut his hair. Hair that's not been cut his whole life. And he couldn't feel it. The flesh, if you're not careful, the complementary man will put you to sleep on the demonic strategies against you. Most people are like that, asleep, and things are being planned and schemed around them. Because while they are asleep, they've empowered the flesh. Galatians 6:8. For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption, but he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. Samson's blindness was not caused by Delilah, nor the Philistines. It was caused by the complementary man that he had strengthened, such that now he became blind or dull to the spiritual activities that were going on between the Philistines and the Israelites. At this time, we find this man loses everything. The story of Samson, and I conclude on this topic, please, for a moment. One day, he is now been blinded. He has become a public spectacle for the Philistines. Whenever they gather together and say, bring out that former strong man, the guy who used to bring him up here, and let's watch him, mock him. See, if you give yourself to the flesh, one day you'll be a public spectacle for the demonic. People will be one that will be talking, look at that person. You know this person used to do this, used to do this, used to do that, used to do a spectacle. But Samson gives us a last lesson in his life. You see, he had a lifetime to teach about being consecrated. He teaches the lesson in the last moment. As he's there now, one time his hair began to grow up, his consecration. That was a mark of his consecration. The power wasn't in the hair. The power, it says, when the Spirit of God came upon him. The power, but that was a symbolic of consecration. When they cut it off, it just shows completely had gone to hell, up to the devil. But now he's at a place whereby now the consecration begins to come back. He began to get aware again and of his consecration. He began to see what God had called him to be. He began to reflect on his birth and his mistakes, and the hair grew back. The consecration was still there. And he asked one day, God, let your Spirit come upon me one day. Once again. And he's holding the pillars, the main pillars to that building. and the strength of God came back. Let me tell you somebody, you could have been giving yourself to the flesh for a long period, but your consecration is still available to you. You can still give yourself to God. Right now, you can say, God, I've lived empowering the consecrated man, but now, God, I'm changing my mind. I'm going to live a consecrated life. And let me tell you, the hair will begin to grow back. Oh, the things that have made you into public spectacle, you can defeat them once again. Samson pushed those pillars again. His might came back. His strength came back, and the whole building collapsed. The Bible ends the story of Samson with these words. That day he killed more Philistines than he did his whole life. Remember, his whole life, the Philistines, every time he fought them, it was from the complementary man, the flesh, the old man. But when he fought them once, as a consecrated spiritual man, he killed more. In one day, he was able to do more than what he did in his lifetime. Listen, that's the power of God in a man, when a man is consecrated. God wants you to be consecrated. You have to feed. You have to empower the consecrated man. When you refuse to do certain things, when you are in church, when you are praying, when you are evangelizing, when you are empowering the consecrated man. And when the consecrated man is empowered, he will always do more than the complementary man. The spirit will always do more than the flesh. And that's the word I have for you. You will never be an underachiever. Underachievers are people who work with the complementary man. And real achievers and even overachievers work with the spiritual man. They work a life that's consecrated. Ask any person who has achieved the greatest things in life. You find that a dimension of consecration or discipline and character. Because the consecrated man will always do more than the complementary man. I want every head bowed, every eye closed. Thank you very much for taking your time to watch this. Jesus loves you. All this that we're doing here, that I'm doing right now, is because Jesus loves you. Jesus cares for you. And this morning, do you have Jesus? Do you have Jesus where you are? Are you consecrated? Are you sanctified? Are you given to Him? Are you devoted, dedicated to Christ? If not, you can become a consecrated man or woman where you are. I want you to pray this prayer with me. Say these words after me. Lord Jesus, I am a sinner. I've offended heaven. I've offended man. I've done things that are sinful, that are not right to your sight. Lord, I'm a sinner. But right now I repent against my sin. I believe Jesus Christ, your Son, you sent Him to die on the cross for me and resurrect so that I can have life with you. Lord Jesus, change my life. Make me new. Let all things, my sin pass away. Make me new. I repent against every sin and I shall not go back to it. If you pray that prayer, in Jesus' name, you are saved and you're born again. For the rest of us watching this, right now, find a place to pray. Begin to consecrate yourself. Begin to empower. Prayer empowers the consecrated man. Begin to weaken the complementary man. Begin to weaken the flesh. Begin to empower so that it can overcome the flesh. Empower the new man. Begin to pray that you shall keep restrictions. Christianity carries with it a Nazarene attitude. Let's begin to pray. And as we pray, you can pray as long as you want in your household. And and as you listen to this. But due to time or recording, I want to thank you right now. Let me pray for everybody. Father, in the name of Jesus, I pray for everybody that consecrate life right now. Consecrate us. Consecrate me, oh God. God, to serve you. God, I renounce, God, the flesh. And so, God, to the Spirit. In everybody's life, oh God, right now. That the fruit that will come out will be the fruits of the Spirit. I give you glory and honor. Thank you, Lord, for this moment. Thank you for this service. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. God bless you.